caught up in the deception. Moving on, verse 6 says, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. So this woman, the false religious system, what we get from this verse is going to be opposed to true followers of Jesus Christ in the tribulation. Now, there are going to be those in the tribulation who believe in Jesus. And we refer to them as the tribulation saints. They're not a part of the church. The church is with Christ. In the tribulation, those who come to believe, they're going to be a separate group from the church, but they will believe in Jesus Christ. And many of them are going to die martyrs' deaths. And so what John is seeing here is that this false religious system is drunk on the blood of the saints and of the martyrs of Jesus Christ. Many in the tribulation period will embrace the truth. They'll read the book of Revelation, they'll look and see, wow, these things are happening. They perhaps will remember words that loved ones and friends shared with them before taken out. Before they were taken out, and they will believe on the Lord Jesus Christ. But it's going to be very, very difficult. They're going to die martyrs' deaths. They're not going to give in to the worship of the beast, worship the Antichrist. And so this woman, the false religious system, will be opposed to true believers in Jesus Christ during the days of the tribulation. John sees her drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And he sees her, he's marveling with great amazement. And moving on in verse 7, he goes on to explain. But the angel said to me, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. So now, the angel says, hey, I'm going to kind of shed some light on what you're seeing here, the significance, the symbolic meaning of what you're seeing here. The angel goes on to say, verse 8, the beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. And so here in verse 8, the angel's clearly making it known that this beast really is the Antichrist. The angel is really showing John basically what he already knew about the beast back from chapter 13, from what he saw in chapter 13. Beginning here in verse 8, the angel refers to the beast as he who was and is not and yet is. And John already knew that about this beast. From chapter 13, as John explained what he saw in that verse about the beast, we learned that at some point the beast, the Antichrist, is going to be mortally wounded. We're specifically told that he will be mortally wounded, and this wound will be caused by a sword. And so, as the Antichrist is on the scene during the days of the tribulation, there's going to apparently be an attempt to assassinate the Antichrist. He's going to be mortally wounded, and if there are witnesses, they're going to walk away convinced that the Antichrist had died. Wounded to death, as the King James says. It'll appear that the Antichrist is literally dead. But, as we learned in chapter 13, this mortal wound will be healed. And so it appears that there's going to be this appearance that the Antichrist, having been mortally wounded to death, will resurrect from the dead. And when it comes to this, some believe, well, he will only appear to be dead and then, be resurrected. It's like, all life support is gone. Maybe even, hey, they try to keep them alive with medical science and machinery and everything, and basically the plug was pulled, and so you just have this corpse laying there. Perhaps he would really die. He'll be revived. So there's some that believe that it's only going to look like he's dead. Others say that he's going to be literally dead. And if the Antichrist is literally dead, then God is going to have to give Satan the power to give life to the Antichrist. So there are those two views on this resurrection, this as an alleged resurrection of the, not alleged, but this resurrection of the Antichrist. Some say it's real. Some say, well, it only looks to be real. And so beast is referred to as he who was, and is not, and yet is. And so it's talking about this revival of the Antichrist. So what the angel says there is in accordance to what John already learned in chapter 13. So the beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life. So basically the result of this resurrection of the Antichrist will just cause the result will be people will marvel. And then he will follow the beast on account of this resurrection. They will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life. So again, here's the reference to the book of life in the book of Revelation. From what we know of the book of life, from the references in Revelation, as I've studied and looked at these references, it's an interesting thing to do, to look at the various verses on the book of life in the book of Revelation. And if you have Bible software, cut and paste, and just kind of look at those verses and sort of meditate on that truth. But from what I see, and there's also a reference to the book of life in Philippians, but from what we know about the book of life is that there's some, I should say, what I conclude of the book of life as I look at these verses is that there's some names that are written in the book of life, and there's some names that are not written in the book of life. And clearly, in verse 8 of Revelation 13, we are told that all who dwell on the earth will worship the Antichrist, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And so some names are not written. In Revelation 20, we find that anyone not found in the book of life is going to be cast into the lake of fire. So some names are not written there. Some names are written there. And the names that are written in the book are certainly those of us who have genuinely placed our faith in Jesus Christ. Our names are in that book. And I just think about Jesus on one occasion. He says, rejoice because your names have been written in heaven. And that's what we can certainly do. We can rejoice as we place our faith in Jesus Christ. We can rejoice that our names have been written in heaven, in the book of life. If you genuinely believe, your name's going to be in the book of life. But those who do not believe, their names are not in the book of life. At the end, there's a warning that, you take away from the words of this prophecy, God will take away your part from the book of life. So there's the controversy is, okay, well, what does it mean to have your name taken away from the book of life? I don't know. And that's just where, I just don't want to take away from the words of this prophecy. And I just know. And then there's that other part about the overcomers. He who overcomes, I will not blot out his name from the book of life. Jesus talked about that. Man, I spent an hour yesterday. Seriously, I spent a good hour scratching my head over all this. and I shy away, what does it mean to have your name blotted out? I don't know. And hey, some have views, and I'm still scratching my head on this. All I know is that it's good to have faith in the Lord Jesus. If you have faith in the Lord Jesus, you have no worries. Have faith, no worries at all. Your name has been written in heaven. And genuine saving faith, your name will be in there. Your name will be in the book of life. And really, I just think of the evidence of our faith is fruit. As James talked about, faith without works is dead. As Jesus said, in John 15, he talked about abiding in Him and being fruitful in Him. The one who doesn't bear fruit is cast out as a branch and is withered. And so there will be fruit that results in genuine saving faith. Now, there are those who make they have actually the 11th hour conversions, on the deathbed. They give their lives to Christ. They're in, baby. Because it's all about faith. It's all about being saved by faith. And then you have added to this is you have some believers who actually do some backsliding. And so they appear to walk, they walk with the Lord, they genuinely backslide, they backslide. So the fruit of their life as they're backsliding isn't great, but yet they're still saved. And God will chase them now and bring them back. So with the book of life, I like Chuck's position. Chuck Smith, who's with the Lord right now. I don't know. It's okay. I scratch my head at the book of life. As far as what Jesus meant when He said, I will not blot out your name from the book of life. We talked about this idea of being blotted out. But that shouldn't make us feel insecure if we are believers. Because really, what that can do, and I'm kind of going off, but so that hour of reflection yesterday is proving fruitful right now. Because, you look at that and go, you can have a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? You can be really insecure. It's like, am I saved? Did Jesus blot my name out of the book of life? I was in there and maybe... But if you have that flutter of fear, I think it's only proof that you are saved. So if you have flutter of fear, maybe Jesus blotted me out of this book. No, if you have that flutter of fear, give your anxiety to the Lord, you're saved. I would be insecure if I was like, talk to the head, Jesus, I don't believe in you. I'd be a little bit insecure there if I was in that position. So take that as my commentary on the book of life. I know it's controversial, but you know what? I would recommend look at the verses yourself. Just look at them yourself. Go into the concordance, write them all down, and then just look and come up with your own conclusion about it. Don't take my word for it. I just know I don't want to take away from the words of this prophecy. So at any rate, the beast will ascend out of the abyss, the bottomless pit, and will go into perdition. And so we see here in verse 8 that the beast is going to ascend out of the bottomless pit, otherwise known as the abyss. The abyss is the place of confinement for demons. And so what we get here is the Antichrist will definitely be demon-possessed. He is going to be evil. And he's going to go into perdition, in other words, eternal destruction. Moving on, verse 9. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue for a short time. He must continue a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7th, and is going to perdition. And so now the angel gets into the symbolism behind the beast. The angel explains that the 7 heads of the beast represent 7 mountains. Now, one view that is held by Chuck Smith, whom I admire very deeply, this is just one view concerning these 7 mountains, is that these 7 mountains or hills are those in which the city of Rome is built. From ancient times, Rome has been known as the city of the 7 hills. And so according to this view, the false religious system of during the tribulation will be based in Rome. The angel explains here that the 7 heads also represent 7 kings. Not only hills, but 7 kings. And according to Chuck's view, he suggested that these 7 kings represent 7 Roman emperors. And John Corson also sees this from this angle. There are others who reject this view. This is just one view. There are definitely other views. And see, that's the thing. It's like, hey, the best commentary in the book of Revelation will be during the tribulation. Unfortunately, because, you're going to see these things. So, just going off that possible view, concerning that the 7 heads represent both the city of Rome and 7 Roman emperors, the angel said that 7 kings have fallen. So, at the time that John was writing, 5 Roman emperors had died. 5 had fallen. Then the angel says 1 is, and this would be Domitian, who was the 6th emperor who was on the throne as John was writing. So 5 had fallen, 1 is. And the angel said, and the other, this would be the 7th, has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. Then the angel said, verse 11, the beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7th, and is going to perdition. So the beast, the Antichrist, will be the 8th, yet he will be of the 7th. So there's going to be this tie of the Antichrist to the Roman Empire, and which is fitting with the prophecies in the Old Testament. There's going to be a connection there. And according to Chuck Smith, John Corson, the Antichrist will be, this phrase that the Antichrist will be of the 7 Roman emperors, means that he will be one of the 7. So they even, it's not just a tie, but there's going to be a deeper connection to these emperors than may appear on the surface. Their view is that perhaps the Antichrist is going to be possessed by the same demon that possessed Nero, the Roman Emperor Nero. It's a wild thing, just going off the view. It's not proven, but he will be of the 7 in the sense that he's going to be possessed with the same demon that possessed the Roman Emperor Nero. Just what's interesting is that we know that Nero was ruling when Paul, the apostle, appealed to Caesar in Acts 25. You know how Paul he was getting a running around and wasn't getting a fair trial, and he appealed to Caesar, and the governor said, okay, you appeal to Caesar you go. And then that's when he went up to Rome, and we will learn about this in the book of Acts. And he was under house arrest, and from there he penned some letters. And it's believed that, history shows that he actually appeared before Caesar. He was released. It's believed he was released, and he wrote a few other letters. So it appears that Paul stood trial before the Emperor Nero. And from what we know of Paul, he no doubt used it as an opportunity to share the gospel of Christ. And so he probably told Nero about Jesus, because that's who Paul was. He would do it. And that was Paul's calling. The Lord says, you will testify before Gentiles and kings for my sake. And no doubt, it's believed that he did. It's likely. Well then, according to Chuck Smith, he was talking about this in his commentary, and it's possible. History verifies that it was after Paul's visit to Nero, sometime after that, and Paul was released, that there was a drastic change that came over Nero. It seems that he became somewhat insane. This is consistent with history. Nero had one screw loose at one point, for sure. And it could be that having rejected Christ at that time, that he was actually demon-possessed. Because his actions became like that of a demon-possessed man. He set Rome ablaze and had an insane glee as the city burned. I just remember just going on the History Channel, just watching about the emperors, and just played his fiddle, he said. As the city was ablaze, he used the occasion of fire to blame Christians and to launch a persecution against them, and the result was the martyrdom of thousands of Christians. And he would cover Christians with tar, set them on fire in his garden. He shrieking and in the nude, he would drive his chariot in the midst of the burning bodies of Christians. I mean, this is insanity. After launching this persecution, Paul was arrested again, and he was beheaded under Nero. We know that Peter was arrested and crucified upside down by his request. The upside down part was by his request. The crucifixion wasn't, of course. Under Nero, that happened. It's a known fact that the early church referred to Nero as the beast. And as we look at here at verse 11, that the beast, the Antichrist, will be the 8th emperor, yet he will be of the 7. It's just believed that perhaps the same demon that possessed Nero will possess the Antichrist. And so that's just one view. Our purpose is to move through the Scripture and kind of grapple with these things. And I'm open to grapple with you on the various views. I'm open to exactly the different views. They're fascinating. But moving on in verse 11, we read, the beast that was and is not, is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. So, according to the angel's explanation here, the 10 horns on the 7 heads represent 10 kings. Back in chapter 13, we considered that the Antichrist will rise to power out of an allegiance of 10 nations. And these 10 nations will be associated with the old Roman Empire, and they will actually be a rejuvenated and renewed Roman Empire. And their connection to the old Roman Empire is made clear from what we learned in the book of Daniel, specifically chapters 2 and 7. And the angel says here in verse 13 that these kings are of one mind, that is, they will be unified. They will give their power and their authority to the beast. They will submit to the beast. Moving on, these 10 kingdoms will make, under the authority of the beast, will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. So it's these 10 nations under the authority of the Antichrist will rebel against Jesus at the Battle of Armageddon, which we'll learn about further on. A battle against Jesus and faith. It's going to be a slaughter. There's just no competition. Hopefully we do like that with the Seahawks today, you know? Not that we would want them to die or anything. It's just, you know, the score. I just had a vision. So, get back to this. They'll rebel against Jesus. Jesus will totally annihilate them. Verse 15 goes on to say, Then he said to me, The waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So what the angel says here speaks of how the false religious system will have power over the masses. And the reason it will have such power is it will be tied to the political system of the Antichrist. Now back in verse 1, the angel said to John, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters. And in the final verses here of the chapter, we see that this judgment that God will bring upon the great harlot. Verse 16. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. So these verses point to the fact that once the Antichrist has used the false religious system to gain power, he will then turn against the false religious system, and he will gain control of it. This will definitely happen in the midpoint of the tribulation period, when, as we learned in chapter 13, I know this can be a little overwhelming, but as we learned in chapter 13, the image of the beast is set up in the rebuilt temple. So at that point, the beast is really going to use and abuse the false religious system, which is clearly conveyed here in verse 16. Moving on, verse 17 says, For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. So according to God's own will, God will use the beast and the 10 rulers under his authority to destroy the false religious system. That's the judgment. And the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. This is a reference to Rome. So you know, really, the sense is that there's going to be there's a definite strong tie to Rome, the Roman Empire, and you know, with all the trappings of religion, the way that the great harlot is described, certainly it's natural to think about the Roman Catholic Church, the power and the influence of the Roman Catholic Church, and like I said. You know, when the rapture happens, all true saved people will be gone. Even Catholics who are truly saved, they will be gone. Some even Catholics, yeah. Even Catholics. All of us, even Calvary Chapel. The least of them all will be raptured. But all that structure, all the trappings of religion will go in, and Satan's just going to work through this system. And you know, how does this passage apply to my life? Well, we could just stand back and marvel at God and the fact that he has a plan. And you know, there's a lot here. But God has a plan that's going to just sum up everything. And the basic